Many crisis intervention models strictly focus on methods for reducing crisis behaviors, and very little is said about the caregiver-care-receiver relationship. And as a result, the quality of those relationships are often diminished. When asked what the most important commandment was, Jesus said to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, relationships are a priority. Relationships, vertical and horizontal, are an essential part of being a follower of Christ. So, shouldn't building, maintaining, and strengthening relationships also play an important role in how we respond to the challenging and crisis behaviors in children, teens, and adults with special needs or mental health issues? At Key Ministry, we believe that it is. Relational crisis prevention is a user-friendly, research-based approach for preventing or decreasing challenging and crisis behaviors while maintaining strong and healthy relationships with care receivers. Two years ago, I made a trip to Boston. And after landing at Logan International Airport, I quickly grabbed my bags, got off the plane, rented a car, and took off for the Hyatt Regency, which was just off I-93, about 5 miles away. No problems, right? I'm usually a good driver with a great sense of direction. But nonetheless, I had only made it about a mile or two from the airport when I hit several of those roundabouts and ran into some very chaotic traffic conditions. And after several wrong turns, I realized that I was lost. I had gotten off track. My mistake that was before departing the airport, when the rental car agent asked, "Sir, do you need a road map?" I responded with an enthusiastic, "No, I don't." Without a road map, I wasn't able to make a plan to get back on track towards my desired destination. There are three main benefits for having a roadmap for crisis prevention. They are: 1. A roadmap for crisis prevention helps you to know where you're at in the crisis escalation cycle. 2. A roadmap for crisis prevention helps you to know where you want to go. What direction do you want to move or do you need to move in the crisis escalation cycle? And 3. A roadmap for crisis prevention, crisis escalation, also helps to know when you're going the wrong way. In other words, when things are moving in the wrong direction. Let's take a quick look at the crisis escalation route, and we'll take a quick look at each stop along the route, and in future Key Ministry training modules, you and I will take an in-depth look at each stop and some effective solutions to preventing or decreasing challenging and crisis behaviors while building and maintaining a strong relationship. But for now, let's take a quick look at the predictable route your care receiver takes when his or her behaviors become off track. The first stop along the crisis escalation route is the tension phase. The tension phase begins when something happens that causes your care receiver to begin to feel anxious, stressed, or tense. It can be caused by something internal, such as a thought, or external, such as someone taking a favorite item away from your care receiver. The types of events that trigger the tension phase are very individualized for each care receiver. If the tension phase is not resolved when the care receiver's behaviors will then often become more off track and escalate to the refusal phase. The refusal phase is the phase in which the care receiver typically starts challenging those around him or her by refusing, verbally or physically, or both, to follow any instructions until their perceived problem is resolved. This phase of the crisis escalation route is the one where your care receiver starts to become less rational and his or her ability to problem solve decreases. If the problem is not resolved, your care receiver's behaviors can continue to escalate to the next stop along the crisis escalation route, which is the aggression phase. The aggression phase is characterized by physically acting out behaviors. Care receivers at this point are not able to problem solve and rarely respond to verbal directions because they have temporarily lost their ability to make rational decisions. The aggression phase is a very energetic phase, mentally, emotionally, and physically. A person can only sustain that type of energy for a period of time, and when this energy is depleted, your care receiver will journey to the last stop along the crisis escalation route, the calm down phase. The calm down phase is the phase in which your care receiver begins to calm down. There will be a very noticeable decrease in verbal and physical energy, and as a result, your care receiver will start to become more calm, become more rational, and start to be able to problem solve and respond to verbal instructions. It's important to remember that the relationship between you and your care receiver is strengthened or weakened based on how you respond during each phase of the crisis escalation journey. We'll talk more about how to do that in future key ministry training modules. An important concept in relational crisis prevention is a concept called social reciprocity. And social reciprocity simply means this, that the behaviors of one person influence and are influenced by the behaviors of another person. And what we know in crisis intervention research is that the behaviors of caregivers tend to mirror the behaviors of care receivers during crisis. So for example, if your care receiver is becoming tense, starting to verbally act out, it's not uncommon to see caregivers mirror those behaviors. They become tense and they start acting out. We talked about the crisis escalation route. It's a very predictable route. You go from the tension stage to the refusal stage to the aggression stage to the calm down stage. Each stage has a particular set of behaviors associated with it. And again, what we know from social reciprocity is that the caregiver's behaviors will tend to reflect the care receiver's behaviors. And you have to be conscious of that. You have to understand that concept. I think that, Jesus shared with us something called the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In other words, as caregivers, we're supposed to be taking that first step in engaging in those behaviors that we would like our care receivers to reflect back to us. That would be the use of social reciprocity. But it's the caregivers who have to first engage in the behaviors that help to decrease crisis behaviors rather than increase them. And so you have to be careful in crisis situations that as a caregiver, again, you can start to mirror the behaviors of the care receiver. That can cause crisis to de-escalate, and you have to do something different. That's that concept of the golden rule. Do something different first so that someone else will do something different in return. And here's what you would do. During the tension phase, you would problem solve. In the refusal phase, you're going to engage in some behaviors called limit setting. In the aggression phase, you'll engage in some behaviors called alternatives. And in the calm down phase, negotiate. But the behaviors that caregivers engage in during the crisis escalation route are designed to help the care receivers de-escalate or move out of the crisis escalation. And we do that through social reciprocity, or what Jesus called the golden rule. When you've been in crisis mode, nothing that anyone else does is ever perceived as being neutral. Think about it. When you've been angry or stressed, the behaviors of other people are either perceived as something that helps you to resolve your problem or to make it worse. Well, your care receiver is not any different. When they're somewhere in that crisis escalation cycle, they're going to perceive your behaviors as either behaviors that help them to get closer to solving their problem or to making things worse. And that's why it's important that you have to have a plan. And basically, the plan, the acronym, helps your care receiver to get back on track. And at the tension phase, that's going to involve P, problem solving. In the refusal phase, it will involve limit setting. During the aggression phase, it will involve coming up with some alternatives. And in the calm down stage, going back to negotiating. These are effective strategies that are effective only in the phases of the crisis escalation route that are identified in this graph that we have here. Each one of these is designed to help problem solve and de-escalate the behaviors, to help your care receiver is seeing that what you're doing is helping them to get closer to solving their problems and therefore decreasing their behaviors. And we'll talk more about these in depth in future Key Ministry module trainings. Positive support strategies, what are they? Positive support strategies are a set of research-based strategies that are designed to improve a care receiver's quality of life and decrease challenging or crisis behaviors. And here's just a few of them that we'll talk about in future Key Ministry training modules. The importance of positive support strategies is this. Years ago, in crisis intervention, the intervention strategies used to focus strictly on decreasing challenging and crisis behaviors, but no attention was paid to the impact that those interventions had on an individual's quality of life. So restraint techniques and seclusion rooms were intervention strategies that were used, but didn't produce a quality of life outcome for individuals. Today, positive support strategies are used because not only do they decrease challenging and crisis behaviors, but they also improve the care receiver's quality of life. And these are just some of the positive support strategies that we'll talk about in future Key Ministry training modules. So what is the delivery method that we'll use to teach you about relational crisis prevention? We'll use a variety of ways. 1, online training videos. 2, question and answer sessions in order to answer specific questions that you might have about how to use relational crisis prevention strategies in a special needs ministry classroom or at home. Blog posts and caregiver success stories. Each of these methods will be utilized to help you understand relational crisis prevention and its use, the strategies, the positive support strategies, and the other concepts to be used in a special needs ministry classroom. And the same methods can also be used at home also, in order to decrease challenging and crisis behaviors and yet continue to build and strengthen relationships in the process.